So welcome, good morning. Well,
Good
actually, for
morning.
you, it's in the afternoon, right?
It
It's
is.
true. Good afternoon
Good
from
afternoon.
Athens.
So hi, everybody. Of course, this is the question guy. This is Dr. K, and I am here with, and I don't want to butcher this. And so Dr. Erika Gillette,
Gillette. Yes.
okay, and Katerina.
Tsikalaki.
And like I said, I don't want to embarrass myself. And so I'm not going to try, but I will practice that. Thank you so much for joining me today on another podcast called The Question Guy. So you've got something really exciting going on literally today. And I think for the rest of the month of May, right?
Yeah.
And
Until the
it's called
29th.
it's called the Science United Festival, right?
It's
Yes.
true. That's our festival.
So before we get into what that's all about, how did it all get started? So what's the backstory
Fine
and
story.
what tell me about it?
So that goes to me. My name is Erika Gillette. I have my EDD in science education from Teachers College at Columbia University. I had originally worked in the past with children who experienced trauma in New York City. So my experience was teaching science to children who had experienced trauma. And then I also went on to start a not-for-profit in Harlem called Hypothekids, which is a science after-school summer camp. And also they have a high school program that works with Columbia University to prepare scientists. In 2017, the refugee crisis kind of made the headlines. And I thought to myself, well, if science is something that is, I always believe that science can be therapeutic and beneficial to students who've experienced trauma from my own experiences. If it can be beneficial to the students I serve here or have served, it could be beneficial to these students as well. So science isn't exactly something that there's been a curriculum developed for this context, and the context that I'm speaking of is the context of displaced students or displaced children. The students that we work with typically come from Afghanistan, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Congo, Egypt, Palestine. So they're all experiencing, for the most part, some sort of displacement.
Right.
And with that comes a lot of interruptions to their education. So teachers who are located within refugee camps, or we also call them relocation centers, have a big job because these students are 2, 3, 4 years behind, and some have never even been to school. So, and there's a language barrier, mind
Right.
you.
Okay.
So experiential learning and science in particular is something that can transcend language barriers because it's something that you can observe. It's something that students can make observations, predict, identify trends in the data. And you don't need necessarily, for some activities, the language to explain that. And the most important thing is finding the right activities because not all activities work well when there's a language problem, barrier. So my goal was to develop science curriculum for this context, for the displaced student context. And the first thing I did was I went to a camp in Inofita, which is about an hour and a half from Athens. And I tried a lot of different activities that I had already developed for my not-for-profit in New York, and I saw what worked and what didn't. And then we also had a translator, Desiree Halpern, who helped to provide us, and Hassan Parsa, who helped to provide us with students' insights and conceptual understandings in their own native language. So I didn't want there to be a barrier between what they knew and what they could explain. So that's why the translators were so important. So we knew that these activities worked and the students understood the concepts. And obviously they have to be observable phenomena like, physics.
Lamp.
Yeah, it's like electricity, magnetism, force and motion. These are all things that are observable that students could make connections to, have backgrounds with, and really help them get excited about learning. And that gets the teachers excited about learning too. And so I came back the next summer, and then I went back to Inofita.
So you're in Greece?
I'm in Greece right now. I live in
Okay.
New York City.
Okay.
And I went to Inafita, I went to Ritsona. So developing this program is very much like science itself. And we did more trials, we got more feedback, more children, make sure, yes, this works, yes, this works, yes, this works. And then we went to another camp in Yanina, which is on the north eastern or western part of Greece. And we worked again, got feedback from teachers and continued to develop the materials. And then I developed the professional development materials. The kits, which have everything that teachers need in order to teach the activities. And we provide those to the teachers from the donations that we receive. And they're free to the teachers because, as you might know, funding is very limited within emergency education context. There's not a lot of resources to use to teach, especially science can be particularly expensive to teach, but we try to use very easily resourced materials such as LED lamps, coin cell batteries, straws, like magnets. And so we try to do it in a very inexpensive way. And then we trained teachers, and I came back in December of 2018.
Okay.
And I trained Katerina, and that's where I will turn the story over to her.
Well,
We met.
is this still the backstory?
Yes, this is
Okay,
still the
'cause
best
this-
story. Sorry, I told you it's long.
You have time, right?
We have
No.
lots of time. Absolutely.
You're right.
Okay, your part, because some of the things that you mentioned already are really significant because you talked about a very specific group, trauma and displaced, and that's a critical focus here. So I would like to be able to get to those two terms, but Katerina?
I'll talk about the benefits of science as we go on, because my dissertation was on the perceived benefits of science by the educators, because
Oh, well, we could be talking for weeks.
I know.
It's true.
So this is one of my participants in my study, but
Participant number
4.
4. Yeah, the study was very fruitful. So we met in December 2018. I'm Katerina Tsikalaki from Science Unite Project, but at the time, I was working in Skaramaga's refugee accommodation site as a teacher of science and math. And it was my last few weeks before the program ended, because interruptions in education for displaced students are not only due to their previous life during their journey coming to another country. They also happen when they are displaced and they are in the host country. So the program stopped and then they start again. So it was my last few weeks and we had to say goodbye to the students and everyone was very sad. But suddenly I meet Erika and Erika gives me so many kits for physics, and it was about electricity and magnetism and some really nice activities, which are, if you have to use the STEM term, this was theme because there was also art in it.
Okay.
So she gives me those things, and I used to work in a museum for many, many years and do a lot of hands-on activities for children. So I was like, oh, thank you, because it's really difficult for a teacher to find all these materials and to gather them all together, to organize them, to cut things. These were ready-made. So I taught my students the next 2 weeks, and I give them all those crafts that they took home and they showed to their family, and they were very happy. And I was very happy too. And ever since we started to work together, so we continued piloting activities. And at one point last year, it must have been this time of the year, that there was the idea
To start the festival.
Yes.
We were like, okay, so now we have all these teachers who are using our kits. Now we have, I knew that it wasn't scalable for me to come every 2 times a year to bring these kits and do this. And we wanted to make sure that we could spread the love of science, even to children who may not have access to it within these contexts, because although they do teach science, it's not always in this kind of way. And we also want students to be able to bring the science home with them. and be able to explain their learning to others, because learning doesn't stay within a classroom. It doesn't stay within an ISO box. It doesn't stay in a community center. It has to go out, and students have to be able to explain what they know to their little brother, their little sister, their cousin, their neighbor, because that's where real learning happens, right?
Yeah.
And so by giving the students the materials, little car, you know, I watched children make ramps out of some cardboard they found around. We did the activity in the classroom with small ramps, but we kept the ramps, and they only had the car with the little cup at the top. And so they would make ramps around the camp, and they would put the rocks in instead of the washers, the metal washers we were using, the weights. And they would do the same activity outside the classroom, and then the little kids would come, they would watch, and it was just amazing. Another activity was the magnet activity. One of the students in a relocation center in Athens used all the magnets from her classmates to design a magnet collector to pick up trash from around the refugee or the relocation center. So, you know, all these kind of unintended consequences, I guess you could say, or benefits to the kids in the application outside of what you actually thought, you know, they would be able to do, and they're doing it in other ways. And we get a lot of feedback from teachers as part of the development of the kits. We get lesson plans from the teachers before we give them to them. We get post-reflection journals to see how the activity went and how they would improve it for the future, and we implement that into our own trainings. And we get information on the perceived benefits of science for children who are displaced. And some of the in my studies also showed that increased language acquisition skills, increased ability to collaborate, socio-emotional skills for students, as well as the science understandings of science concepts. Also, some students who are typically perceived as being not interested or off task were now very interested in learning and engaged. So some teachers are very surprised by this. And yes, Katerina mentioned that they're like crafts, but the most important thing is for the students to make it their own, right? So it might be a hovercraft, balloon hovercraft, which everybody knows balloon hovercraft, but like they have a sticker on top, and then they decorate it, and they decorate it sometimes with their Syrian flag, or, you know, their name, and they make it their own, and that makes it more meaningful to them, because it's something that they can take away. So anyway, let's talk about the festival.
At one point, we wanted to do more things.
Well, let's go back for a second. So this is a very specific group of students, population that you are addressing. And so apparently there's a big need and it's not being met. You found it, but there's a backstory to that too, because you specifically said that your focus is for students who have experienced trauma and or displaced. Now, they're not synonymous terms. So how did you get involved with the trauma component, as much as you want to explain? Because the displaced component, I think, is easily identified. You know, we've got refugees across the globe, and so that they can be experienced trauma. Just being displaced is traumatic in itself, but trauma is where you started from. And so why trauma? Just as a curiosity.
So as a background on me, even though I have a EDD in science education, I did not always like teaching science, and that was traumatic. Yes. I became a teacher without wanting to teach it, and my principal gave me a science box, a FOSS box from the University of California, Berkeley, that they had developed, and it was unlike any way that I had learned science. You know, it's very much like read from the textbook, answer the questions. And my students that I worked with in New York, their trauma was, you know, from other people that they trusted and things like that. There were 2, 3, 4, 5. I had 7th graders reading on 1st grade reading levels, doing math on 1st grade reading levels, 2nd grade reading levels. And so they were turned off, and science turned them on. And because they had
turned them on to learning.
Right. And so as a teacher who didn't want to teach science, I was like, there's something more to this that I didn't see. And it's because of my own experience, my own background, my own And that's something that we know about teachers, is that their background and their beliefs about students inform their practice.
Yes.
And context is one of those other parts of it. So the context that you're working in, so it's beliefs or backgrounds, beliefs, context, and all three of those inform a teacher's practice. So that's where I started. I was like, there's more to science than I experienced, and I became the math and science coordinator. I was all about science. I was getting my colleagues in science, and I was like, we're gonna do science.
And
now I have a
Now
doctorate
you
in
are.
science education, but not all teachers want to teach science, and
Well,
a
the
lot of it
concepts
is
are
around-
challenging.
Well, yes, in the preparation, as teachers, we don't have a lot of time in the day to be stripping wires, which is something that is asked when we get some of these kits. So we have these, for our kits, we have the wires already stripped, because you can't assume that everyone knows how to strip a wire.
Right.
they wouldn't even know what was wrong with the activity usually. So we provide the training and we show them the materials. Although it's online training, we send them always the materials ahead to the teachers. And then it's like an experiential workshop online.
Yeah.
So they use the materials and they realize how they work. And then they plan their own lesson, and we always support them through the whole process.
And trauma can be seen in many different ways too, I think, for children. It can be seen as withdrawal from not wanting to engage. It can be seen as acting out, where they might throw things at someone, or attention seeking behavior. So there's a lot of different components to trauma. And I found that when I was first started teaching science, the children I worked with wanted to be in class, stay in class, not run out of the class, it was an incentive to learn science. And so, and that's what we've heard as well from teachers, is that, that there's a lot of benefits, and it shows when they're recommending it to their friends. And, we were in Yanina, right? And there was a student who was like running around, and we were doing a balloon activity on a fishing line to see how far it went with the different amounts of air.
That was a hard day.
It was a hard day. We were in the middle of a field. It was hot. We were trying. So we're testing a new unit. Again, we're always testing, always creating new material, because maybe it can be used in other places. We don't know. We've used it here. More research. But this one student was like, she sits down. She's very calm. She wants to participate. She wants to hold the pump, and it's just like it calms. It's calming too to color. Art is a therapy for children who have trauma. Music is a therapy for children who have trauma. Science has been taught through hip hop, right? With Chris Emden. So I think that science can be a therapy as well.
But we need to.
But we're not therapists, and we can't say that.
And that's okay. We're educators here, so this is a topic on education. But I want to go back, Katerina. You did, and this is my next question. Since you actually brought it up, STEM versus science, and so, or STEAM versus science. This is very clearly science, because STEAM encompasses a variety of other broader topics, and so. And you're repeatedly using the word science. So this is very much a science curriculum. Why is that? Why is it specific to science? I think you hinted to it earlier, because it opens up dialogue, it engages students, but there is such a push in this past decade or so to use STEM education, STEM tech, and a lot of that focuses on technology. And then
Western though. It's a Western term that we use.
Okay, so explain that to me, because I'm here in the States.
Well,
if you talk to a parent in a relocation center and tell them that their children are learning STEM, they're like, what? If you tell them they're learning science, they're like, oh, yes, science.
Okay. And so it's very much a vocabulary word that they know and understand. And that's
Almost, yes. And also out of respect for STEM, sometimes we believe that when you do STEM, you have to include all the 4 letters. And so most of STEM called activities do not include all 4 letters. Ours actually,
We
Yes.
do like we have a lot of science and math because
Yes.
we know that our students are 2, 3, 4 years behind in math. We want to make sure that the math activities can support children from kindergarten all the way to 16 years old. For example, the car and ramp activity for younger children, there's a, a tape that has squares with non-standard units to count for the and then there's the meter, and they can see it next to the meter, and the older kids can count or see it on a ruler. And then you can see trials, find divide to find the average, graph it on the XY axes. So there's a lot of different ways to differentiate the math in these activities to support the different learners in your class.
but some of the activities that we have don't really have the engineering part. So calling them STEM wouldn't be.
But it's
Hmm.
specific. You clearly want to teach science because
Yes, and
it
through
provides.
science.
Go ahead.
And I'm sorry, and through science, because our teachers, the ones our beneficiaries, our immediate beneficiaries are the teachers. Usually, they also make use of our kids to teach language at the same time. So we don't only promote teaching science, but through science, we have found ways to help them teach other lessons as well.
So for example, the same car and ramp activity, the teachers might put the Greek alphabet on a line, and they put the car on the ramp, they put the different amounts of weights in based on what they know from the activity before, and the car lands on a certain letter, and then they say that letter. So they continue to teach their goals for their class through the science activities.
Yes, they can use them
And
again
through
and
like the
again.
fishing pole, they make a magnet fishing pole. When one teacher, they have a fish with the paper clips that have the numbers as dots.
Mhm.
So they can count the numbers, touch and feel the numbers, and then match them with the corresponding numeric value, right?
Mm.
So there's so many different ways that our teachers are creative, and when we do our workshops, we bring up all of these different examples so that teachers know that like these activities, there's a foundational kind of science component to them, but they can be extended
Right,
in
right.
supporting them to teach their own goals for their class.
And so based on what you said earlier, there is the social emotional learning component. The science gives them an easy lead into wanting to learn more. So wanting to be educated or wanting to learn. It can easily be broken down into very simple components to kind of bring them forward in a very gradual manner. And, you know, you bring, and then they get to experience, the outcome of whatever that project is. And so they can take it back and share that knowledge, which, from a technology perspective, they may not be able to do, but science, you could easily do that. Right. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, thank you for hearing that.
But
You synthesized very well.
but you said it, and so the
Yeah.
value is clearly evident as you explain it, because that's really where students, whatever age, really get excited, because they could hold on to it, analyze it, touch it, feel it, make it do something, and then they could go explain it to their older brother, sister, aunt, uncle, younger brother, or sibling, cousin, doesn't matter, because now it's like you said, they've taken ownership of it, and that's really what you want them to do. So did I get
No,
something wrong?
you're right. You got it.
So the festival lasts for 2 weeks, and so it's something new every day, because 2 weeks is a lot of time to be doing something.
Well,
It's a burnout for lots of people, including the two of you. So how do you keep the momentum going? What goes on every day? I'm asking a lot of questions, I apologize.
It's
How
up
does
to
the
the
festival
teacher.
work?
Okay, go ahead. You tell them.
The
Step to the festival.
the festival, most of our work is done, I think, because the
Well,
festival.
every day's you got to do something every day.
So the teachers have to do something every day.
Okay, the teachers.
No, yes. All the projects almost are up on our webpage. So the festival is really asynchronous. And we expect from the teachers and their teams to watch the other teams' projects, because what is the festival? Is a collection of video science projects, science video projects
Yeah,
and project
science.
videos from teams of students around Greece and one school from Jordan. And all these projects are on our website. And we expect from the teachers to watch each other's videos with their students and write comments. That's the festival.
And also, if they like something, then try that activity with their own students.
So it's an exchange.
It's about
So
creating
it's classroom-based activities
Mhm.
across certain regions of the globe.
Yeah, so it's, well, right now it's in Greece because that's where we're hoping to get bigger.
Okay.
But Greece
All of
and
it's in
Jordan-
Greece.
Yes, well,
Okay.
in Jordan.
And
In Jordan.
Okay.
But they're the same students that we worked with before. The Congo, we have Congo,
Afghanistan, Syria, Palestine,
Ukraine.
We have Iran, Iraq. We have also students from Egypt and Greek students who are their classmates.
Mhm. And it's inclusive, that's the great thing about the festival is that they get to learn from each other. And one of the, these things like these large festivals, I won't name names, but like where the kids kind of come together and share out their ideas, that's not an opportunity or a possibility for these children because they don't have papers, they can't travel to like a
The
central
resources aren't there.
location.
Yeah.
So we had to kind of problem solve about how we can create kind of a learning community for children to learn from each other and to learn about each other. And they're only maybe a 2-hour train ride away, but they're similar to you. They have similar experiences to you, and they have a really cool project too that you can learn from. And so I think, and hopefully at some point, you'll have children from Cambodia or from Germany who, would like to participate. We also include indigenous students as part of the description of students who are welcome to participate in the festival. So we definitely, there's not really anything like this on a large scale.
That's
and
why
this is our first
like
year.
it.
So we want to be bigger, and we've been very fortunate to have had as many classes participate. And I think that has to do with our relationships from our science kits and our teacher trainings, and just the responses that we've had from teachers around science with us.
So teachers and schools are involved. You also mentioned you mentioned to me in our direct messaging on LinkedIn that mentors are involved.
Yes.
And I
That's
think
very important.
and I think I saw, and I know I did a post on Dr.
Rana Mustafa.
Exactly. Because I'm not about to. Anyway, there's 4 or 5 mentors.
Four
Four
Yeah.
mentors. So explain the value of the mentor to this program. And can anybody be a mentor, or do you have a vetting process, or how does
So
that work?
we do have, we are asking for mentors who were at one time themselves displaced or have had experienced some sort of displacement or, migration that they experienced. So everyone's journey is different. I think that's something that really is highlighted in the mentor videos that, one
Yeah, I went to
mentor-
YouTube because you have got your your YouTube videos. Yeah.
one mentor really, he came over when he was 18, and it was before a lot of these borders were put up around the European countries. So he had a very different kind of experience than maybe some of the children had, but something that they can relate to. Dr. Rana Mustafa, she went as an academic professor because she realized that it was not safe for her own children. So she went to Canada, to Saskatchewan, and she talks about her journey. So and then we have someone who went to India as a child and then went to California, and she became
A biologist,
biologist,
and bioscientist.
yeah, and studies oncology. And you know, there's computer scientists, so there's all different representations of domains, but there's also representations of experiences and journeys, and also there's
Language representation.
language.
We're trying to establish that. We want the children to listen to someone who speaks their own language. It's very important to have relevant role models. We don't come from the students' backgrounds. We are from Greece. Erika is from America. We couldn't play that role, but it's very important to have your own culture represented, as obviously it's highlighted by research years now. So we haven't had that exact example for refugee students in another festival. So we needed to add that, to add the value of that in our festival. And we have had already very positive feedback from the teachers who showed the mentor videos to their students, that they really listened, and even the children that are more active and they're not sitting easily on the chair, they really listened. When they heard Arabic, they were very focused. So we hope to have more data about this by the end of the festival and at our last meeting with the teachers. But we already see the value. And the value is not only for the students of our festival, it's also for all students who are displaced and their classmates. So they can be more like raise awareness about the journeys and that they're not alone, as Dr. Anna says, Dr. Anna Mustafa.
So how do you choose your mentors, or do they come to you?
We were very lucky.
We were lucky.
It was our first year, so we were like,
searching.
You know, we're established with teachers, right, in Greece, with NGOs who teach, but not necessarily scientists, science organizations and things like that. So we reached out to, like, I found, you know, organizations in the United States I worked with to help to place refugee scientists into labs.
Desiree Highburn helped us a lot.
Yeah.
She's amazing. She's our social media strategist, and she got us connected with Dr. Anna Mustafa and Mohammed Al Dawoodi. And Jamal found us.
Jamal found us.
Jamal found us through LinkedIn. Bravo, LinkedIn. Thank you. Because he was doing his thesis on teaching coding for refugee students. And he found me, and then we found him.
Oh, good, good.
And then
as a result of our conversation, and this is, like I said, this is going to go on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Spotify and other places. So I'm going to put in your contact information. So if somebody's listening and says, hey, I fit into that, you know, picture of a mentor, they can easily contact you, and that would be okay.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, because we need more cultures and more languages also. We definitely need Kurmanji. This is the Kurdish dialect, and we also need from Congo, like maybe French. And we need a lot of faces for our children to see, and a lot of languages to see themselves in the mentors. And like we're gonna help them so much to make up their story and to make a nice narration, and they get to become cartoons too, because we have that. We think that adding cartoons is very useful, so they can become cartoon characters.
Okay.
It's like a nice little narrative. You know, the process for us, it's, you know, we meet the mentors, we find that they're a good fit. They complete an application. The application actually then becomes the script, or the basis for the video story is, the framework, really, the skeleton. And then they send us pictures, and then we find places where maybe the pictures don't fit, and we make the cartoon for the other places,
or memories
that they had that they didn't have a picture for. And then we put it together.
And we have
beautiful video.
original music.
And yes, we got a musician and everything and a very small budget, but we did it. So we're very happy.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to get to the whole budget part towards the end, but now let's focus on,
Well, no.
well, because that's important thing.
That'll be very short.
Well, let's focus on your students. What will your students gain other than that experience and now the love for learning? Are there any tangible things that they will gain at the end of the 2 weeks? Do you have something?
Don't show the name.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna need a picture of that because
We will
Spotify,
find-
this is an audio podcast on Spotify.
Okay, we have we have something in paper.
A certificate. Okay, they get a
Certificate.
certificate. Okay.
They get a certificate. They get their own page on our website.
They get their own page?
Their own page, of course. For
Wow.
their team.
Yeah,
For their
they have a
team.
team flag. They have
A team name.
they get feedback from their peers. And I've reached out to some schools in New York City, so maybe even some children in New York will be
Commenting on the
commenting, or
project.
their teachers will help them with commenting as well. So, but the certificate says this certificate of achievement is probably presented to student of team
Blah, blah, blah.
blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
in honor of amazing teamwork and contribution to scientific knowledge at the 2022 Science United Festival.
So they are building their resume, which is sounds a little strange for very young students, but it's important because especially when you change countries, it's nice to have report cards and certificates, something to show that you didn't just arrive, you were somewhere before in education and you have achievements, and this is important.
So
And
like a
we-
portfolio.
Yes,
of
part
sort-
of the
okay, okay.
portfolio. And we also send the certificates ahead before the end of the festival because some students leave before
Yeah.
the end of the festival. They're suddenly relocated, so we
It's a
have to
challenge.
make sure that they have the web page and they have the report that they did, that the certificate that they did participate in this festival. And
Do they get to participate every year, or is it just? Well, you said this is your first, and so there's
First
the
year of the festival, yes.
so
But-
that you're
Our fifth year of
anticipating.
the organization, yeah.
You're anticipating.
yes, we want
Can-
them to participate again.
Yes.
Yes, we don't have, it's not a competition. Everybody gets a certificate,
Right.
and we support the teachers to create their project, the video projects with their students.
We do meetings with the teachers and whole group where they can share out their ideas, where they can talk about their concerns. So that's also really important, is to
And the
create a
challenges.
community, a professional learning community for the teachers. So it is, working with children who are always, maybe they're moving around, that's a challenge. It's hard, even as a researcher, to be able to show, impact, right? When you don't have access to the student 3 months down the road or 6 months down the road,
Right.
because of just the nature of the
It's
experience.
also heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I remember the first time one of my students left, and I was crying in front of the student. It was not very professional. It's hard, and these changes are constant, especially for the teachers who work inside the camps, like for the teachers who work in education centers there. They experience a lot of changes, and political situations influences their work and their daily life, and especially with the pandemic. Some students haven't been in school for a year in the public school. There have been a lot of issues. So the students are vulnerable, and the teachers are also in a very complex context, and we can't say no to them because they deserve everything.
Yeah.
So we provide whatever we can to support them with our experience and materials, and sometimes encouraging words, most of the time encouraging
Yes.
words, and never saying no to them.
Even if it feels like-
Deadlines, who cares about the deadlines?
We'll move the
We
festival
know.
a week.
We move the festival a week later.
For
It's
you.
okay because they deserve it.
So we got about 10 minutes left because
Yeah.
we almost been on for an hour. I mean, we could be more, but you're probably tired and hungry. I don't know.
No, we ate before.
But we don't want to take up all your day.
But we could actually, come back another day and talk. So there's probably a whole, just your first 10 minutes of the background story, solicited so many questions from me, but I didn't ask. But talk about the budget and how, as much as you can, how does this get funded? What do you need? Who do you need to support you? Again, because this is one, live right now, and two, this goes off of, multiple places. So if somebody wants to say, hey, that's something that I'm interested in supporting, what are you looking for and how can we support you?
So we have, over the last 5 years, distributed 19,000 science kits. And, have done the festival, which meant we needed to find lawyers. We have a very strict child protection policy. The lawyers are very expensive. So, well, after we've done the work, after we've done all the work, it was a good price. But we were like, okay, but if we just write it and you review it, it's less. So, we found ways around it, but we have been able to do those 19,000 kits and the festival we've received $75,000 in funding over the course of the whole span of since 2017. So for those 5 years.
From the amazing Blossom Hill Foundation, which is a nonprofit based in the US, and it funds initiatives for innovative educational programs for students who are displaced, mainly from the Middle East. And they have been
amazing,
very supportive.
They, you go to them and you're like, I think science might work in this context, and they're like, all right, here's $10,000.
First year.
Try it out. And then you're like, actually, I found this, and they're like, okay, here's a little bit more money, a little bit more money, a little bit more money, and then you build something. And that's the great thing about Blossom Hill, is that they continue to invest in us and our dream. And like, I feel blessed that I was able to have people who believed in my dream, like Katerina, like Desiree, that believe in the vision.
Joint dreams. Dream
Absolutely,
alike.
yeah.
But but you have to have a vision, and I think the vision is equity, or making sure that all children have access to education and a love of learning that may not have had the opportunity to receive. And I know that we're doing that.
Yet Blossom Hill Foundation funds many initiatives, so they cannot be our
only
fairy godmothers forever.
Yes.
So we're trying to find other grants as well. We're waiting.
Yeah, some of the grants are like closed grants, so people have to find you and invite you, which is one of
we haven't been invited yet on one of those.
Yes,
if you have one,
if you have an invitation.
And we also are figuring out as like a solidarity economy business plan that other schools might buy some of our kits and help us continue our work with the science kits for displaced students and other vulnerable groups of students here in Greece and maybe elsewhere. So we're figuring out, we're trying all our options right now. And we obviously accepted our first donations in December.
We did our first fundraiser.
It's a lot of work to try to find money. We didn't expect like, at first, we were just with the grant. Now we see that we need more funds to make it sustainable. So we're working on all of these fields besides being creative and implementing the project. You need to find resources.
We do have a PayPal link as well.
We recently
we set that up.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to ask, they have GoFundMe accounts or Kickstarters or things like that. I wasn't quite sure if you were GoFundMe. I think is more appropriate for your situation.
Yeah, so we have we are currently working with a college to establish the opportunity for the tax deductible donations
In the US.
in the US.
Okay.
But our project is actually
Based in Greece.
and it is a
It's
registered.
housed in Greece.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a
okay.
registered
Non-profit civic company in Greece.
so it's
Okay.
a not-for-profit.
Yes.
And so we're registered.
But they
here.
could
We're-
work through what you said, a college in New York?
Yeah, we're working with a college to establish a relationship so that there would be an opportunity for people in the United States if they wanted to donate, and as a tax deduction,
Right, right.
they could receive that.
Because that's what they would look for. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Some people, but yes.
Yes. A lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
people,
yeah,
Yes.
totally.
Yes.
Well, it depends on where you're based, I guess.
So I asked a lot of questions and you were fantastic. I appreciate all of the, well, this is all about you. So I know that you had a big story to tell, and pretty much you've got more to tell if we were to give you another hour. And we could possibly do that if you want to do that. But for the first hour, if I've missed anything, is there anything that you want to say before we kind of close out our conversation? That
Well,
if I missed anything?
well, we would love to connect with people who are interested in the same education field and we have the same dreams with. So please contact us at scienceunitedproject.com and please watch the students project at the scienceunitedfestival.com.
And if you have any comments that you want us to pass along to the students, you can email us as well at Science United, scienceunitedproject@gmail.com.
At Gmail. Okay, so
at
you're gonna have to
Gmail.
give me that
Yes,
through
I'll put that in
LinkedIn.
there.
Katerina, you need to connect with me so that I've got, because I want to put both of your profiles on all the
Thank
description
you.
elements so that regardless of how they get in contact with you, there's multiple ways of getting in contact with you.
It's true, and it's amazing. Technology helps, helps us a lot. And thank you so much for finding us.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your conversation. I appreciate our time. Let me do this. Let me go ahead and take us off live stream and then kind of do a debrief and see how
Okay.
things get.
Yeah.
So just 1, 2, 3. For those of you on LinkedIn, this is a live conversation with the question guy, Dr. K, and I'll see you next time. Take care.